With 40 years of heritage to build upon, the Honda Civic is one of the family hatchback segment's most well-established models, and it's always been a more interesting choice for buyers in the C sector. This is the 10th generation version, which here has benefited from a mild package of updates introduced for the 2020 model year. We've always liked this design's spacious, dynamic-looking body, its strong standards of safety, its classy ride, and its revvy petrol engines. It all just needed a bit of extra polish, which Honda claims to have provided here. Sounds quite promising. Okay, if you're not already familiar with this 10th generation Honda Civic, there are three things that you need to know about it when it comes to the on-the-road experience. First, the mainstream petrol engines are these days very bang up to date, at last with this model line. Second, the suspension's much more sophisticated than that of the old pre-2015 series model. And third, the body it's bolted to is impressively stiff and rigid, as the brand has sought to create the kind of refinement and drive dynamics you'd expect in a much larger car. A promising set of headlines then. Let's scratch a little beneath the surface. Now, we have to start with the engines, because if your experience of this model line relates to older Civic designs, you'll find these current power plants so different to what went before. Most buyers will be choosing between a couple of VTEC turbo units, a 3-cylinder 1-litre engine developing 129 PS, which is what we're trying here, and the alternative 4-cylinder 1.5-litre 182 PS variant. Now, both are a big improvement on the normally aspirated engines they replaced. You'll also be offered a CVT Auto gearbox as an option, but we'd want to stay with the lovely snickety precision of the standard 6-speed stick shift. As for the engine alternatives, the 120 PS iD-Tech 1.6-litre diesel unit used in the pre-2015 model was carried over into this one with only minor changes. Also pretty much unchanged was the 2-litre petrol engine used in the flagship Type R hot hatch, though these days this now puts out 320 PS. You don't need Type R style power though to really enjoy driving this car, thanks to the particularly stiff body that improves traction and body control. Now, that rigid structure also plays its part in contributing to the big car feel that we referenced earlier, something further emphasised by the sophisticated rear multi-link suspension setup that was introduced into this 10th generation design. That allows this model to cruise over potholes that older Civic variants would have crashed through. Most of the changes to this updated version of the 10th generation model feature here at the front. There's now a more elegant, symmetrical lower front grille around the fog lights, with smoother surfaces and sleeker styling blades. A simpler grille beam configuration and fresh air intake design aim to give the front profile a cleaner, more aerodynamic design. Plus, buyers now get full LED headlight clusters and redesigned LED daytime running lights that follow the dynamic lines of the styling blades. And in profile? Well, there aren't too many changes to the sleek and swept-back shape, just some revised 16 and 17-inch alloy wheel designs. As before, buyers get a choice of either the usual 5-door hatch or a 4-door saloon. Now, let's move inside. Honda's realised that a step up in quality was needed here if this Civic was to rival the cabin ambience of more recently launched segment competitors. So, smarter textured interior panels have been added to this revised model, plus the brand has enhanced usability by adding physical buttons and dials for the infotainment and climate controls in response to customer demand. The 7-inch Honda Connect touchscreen is much as before, though, lacking the size, intuitive usability and classy appearance of many rival setups. Through the grippy 3-spoke wheel, you view a relatively conventionally styled instrument binnacle, well, conventionally styled for a Honda anyway, though closer inspection reveals that the middle dial is actually a TFT LCD screen, flanked by stylised digital temperature and fuel gauges. Time to take a seat in the rear. this Mark X Civic model's relatively lower roof height. It sits 20 millimetres lower than the pre-2015 version, and coupe-style rear C-pillar don't prove to be as much of an impediment as we thought might be the case. Taller folk might fear the effect of that lowish roofline. Once inside, though, those over 6 foot will find their heads brushing against the ceiling. In every other regard, though, aided by the 30mm wheelbase increase enabled by the adoption of the unibody platform we mentioned earlier, things are fine in here. In fact, there's probably more room in the back than in any other Focus segment contender, bar Skoda's Octavia. We'll finish by taking a look in the boot, where first impressions are good. The tailgate's light to lift and opens to reveal a large aperture that's complemented by a usefully low sill height. The sloping rear glazing slightly reduces loading height in this 10th generation model. It's 770mm, but despite that, total load capacity measures in at an impressive 478 litre total in most models. If you need ultimate carriage capacity, pushing forward the 60/40 split folding rear seats reveals a flat cargo area with up to 1,267 litres of total capacity. Kaizen, the Japanese approach to continuous improvement, characterises every aspect of this revised 10th generation Civic. The styling won't be to everyone's taste, but it's certainly distinctive and has been nicely smartened up in this revised form. There's plenty else we've been impressed with too. The huge boot, a brilliantly slick manual gearbox, and the sheer uncompromising purpose of the top Type R hot hatch variant. True, despite this facelift model's updates, interior quality still isn't quite a match for best-in-class rivals, but the cabin's now a lot easier to like, and it's certainly very spacious, especially in the rear and in the boot. Plus, of course, this car's built in Britain, for what that's worth. In short, this model, at long last, has come of age. Finally, a car with sense on its side, yet one that retains at least a little of the kind of Honda charisma that every Civic ought to have. It makes its segment a more interesting place.